Sorry about the delay, everyone. We're having a few technical difficulties and we should be set up pretty soon.
Okay, am I on?
Yep, you're here. Can you hear us okay?
Colleen, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Very good. I apologize to everyone for the difficulty with the connection to this meeting. I'm at a conference in Nashville. I thought it would be easier actually to connect to this than the Zoom link than it is, but I'll do my best. And if things really go awry, I can always turn it over to Colleen to run the meeting, I guess.
I got you.
So with my apologies, let's go ahead and get started with our final Senate meeting of the year. And so we will begin with the roll call. Colleen, I'll turn it over to you.
Can you hear me okay, Dan? Okay, I don't think Dan can actually hear us, so we'll work on that. Barber? Barrett?
Here.
Boumanier? Branyan? Brandenburg?
Here.
Brown? Carmack?
Here.
Chambliss? Chong?
Here.
Corley?
Here.
Luis? I saw you. Georgina? All right, I'll catch you on the flip flop.
I'm here.
Oh,
Here,
you're
sorry.
here. Edelman?
Here.
Hellman?
Here.
Urban? Oh, I hear you. I see you. Evans?
Here.
Fuentes?
Here.
Galt?
Here.
Gordon? Graffius?
Here.
Green?
Here.
Hadley?
Here.
Hester?
Here.
Ivory? Harapasmino? Pellison?
Here.
Khan? Kimbrell? Niece?
Here.
Kramer?
Here.
Sung Lee?
Here.
Trung Lee?
Here.
McKinnon?
Here.
Mason? McClenny?
Here.
McLean?
Here.
Nickel?
Here.
Olivier Parker?
Here.
Pisani? I heard you, Lynn. Pinko? Richter? Sullen,
Here.
Self,
Here.
Scott Meyer,
Here.
Shoemake, Snipes,
Here.
Swift,
Here.
Sykes,
Here.
Talbot,
Here.
Tawidi,
Here.
Weber, Lee,
Here. Here.
Weber, and I got you, Jack.
Okay, thank you.
Williams,
Here.
Wofford, and Yoder. I just saw you come in. All right, I'm gonna search for names because I know some people are coming in and connections aren't that great. And then also half of us have the flu. So I'm gonna do searches in the names and I'll just send me a note if I miss you, okay? So we're good.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, thank you, Colleen. I do not see any administrators here, but I'm not sure if my view is the best view. Colleen, do we have any administrators present?
I know Jill Drake is here. I checked with Dr. Aiken. She's going to come in a little bit late, but she said she didn't have any announcements, so I think we can just move forward.
Okay, yeah, well, let's move forward unless, Jill, you wanted to say anything, but otherwise we'll just move to the first agenda item, which I believe is a fairly straightforward announcement from our UPC chair, Karen Graffius. Karen, the floor is yours.
Okay, hey, thanks everybody. We have had a change with our UPC chair for next school year. The person that we had originally announced, we discovered she is a representative and not a senator, so she can't serve as the UPC chair. So Kim Green will serve as the chair for the 22-23 academic year, and she will begin serving on Faculty Senate in the fall.
Very good. Yeah, and we're very grateful for Kim for her willingness to do this, especially as an incoming committee member for a committee that she was not part of last year. So Kim, thank you very much. This is really excellent. And now we move to FDC, to Patrick. This is the reason for calling this meeting. So a very important vote. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Patrick, do you want to share or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, why don't you just keep sharing and
Okay.
you can just, I'll actually refer to page numbers and
Okay.
you can just keep scrolling. And yeah, if you could scroll down for a second, just to the bottom of this first page. Okay, so the page numbers I will refer to are the ones that you can see at the bottom of the page. So not the page number. If you bring up the agenda, you will see different page numbers, just a reference for everybody. So if I mention a page number, it's in reference to what you see here in the screen share. All right, well, anyway, thank you to all of you for being here today, to the meeting in the middle of summer that's really just called mostly for this main FDC item. I don't want to go through the whole history, obviously, of how we came here, but it's important to remember that at the beginning of this academic year, we received word that the Board of Regents had convened, or that the working group that it had convened had created a new PTR policy, but this was a little bit of a misnomer from the start because the changes that were made that also included student success activities did not exclusively affect PTR, but affected really many other areas of faculty evaluation, including promotion and tenure, and certainly annual evaluations. So we had a long process throughout the year, and I would really like to thank very much my fellow FTC members for being so stalwart and putting just tons of work throughout the entire year into this, as well as the liaisons and everybody who has taken an active part in this revision process. You know that this is the policy that has led to an AAUP censure, which I believe still stands. Nothing has really changed on that end. But I do believe that in our strong local faculty governance work, we've really been able to produce something that, of course, has to follow the USG mandate, but that also puts in a very strong articulation of faculty rights, academic freedom, and so forth. So, you know, within the parameters of what we were given, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished here. Just a quick note before I want to highlight a few details here so that you know what you will be voting on today. The version that you are looking at here is essentially represented twice, once with changes in red and once without any changes highlighted. So also, what you're looking at here is essentially the same information item that we presented back in April 15th. So the only things that have changed that information item concern the annual evaluations. After April 15th, Dr. Preston conveyed to me and conveyed to the FTC changes that were requested. There are a few mics on, if I could please sort of have a few mics muted that are on. There's a lot of interference. Thank you. So Dr. Preston conveyed to me the feedback received from Dr. Rayfield and the USG, and they were all about the annual evaluations. Not a huge change, but I will highlight that when we get there. All right. I will also highlight certain areas one by one. I won't read everything out loud. I don't want to take up that much of your time. I assume you had a chance to look at this, but I will then pause briefly before moving on to the next section to see if there are any questions. All right. If you have a question, if you could just unmute yourself and jump in so I don't have to necessarily toggle too much and look at the chat and whatnot. So are there any questions right now up front?
I have a quick one, Patrick.
Yes, go
so
ahead.
you're using the version that you sent me, not the version that's in the agenda, right? So when you tell me a page number, it's the file that you sent me, not the agenda page number.
No, I'm looking at what you're projecting. Connie.
Okay, cool. Okay, I just
So,
wanted
yeah.
to make sure I didn't need to pull something else up, but okay,
Nope,
I'm good to go.
nope. But I'm referring to the page numbers on the bottom of what you're showing. So not, you know, like the screen page number, but the page number in the PDF or whatever.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Got
So
it.
go to page 9, please. Okay, thank you, right there. I don't know why there's a 6. Oh, the 9 refers to the page number in the agenda. 6 is the page number from the actual faculty handbook. So just so there's no confusion. All right, so we decided to put the first articulation of what student success activities are at this point in the faculty handbook, because right afterwards you will see teaching service and academic achievement and professional growth criteria listed for appointment. So that is really the first time where those categories are mentioned. So we saw it necessary that student success activities would first be articulated here. We put in a brief definition from the USG/BOR Academic Affairs Handbook and then fleshed it out a little bit more. And important here to highlight is that we decided in consultation with everybody that student success activities would best be folded into the other reporting categories or evaluation categories, meaning teaching service and professional growth and development. So we decided, and it's important to emphasize, the little pop back up several times, not to create a separate category of evaluation. And that has very much been in keeping with also the USG/BOR's understanding of what colleges and universities could do. So that's met with approval from the USG. If you could keep scrolling, there's some more, I'll stop for questions in a minute, but there's some more areas relating to student success activities. Actually, you can scroll all the way to page 21, please. bottom of 21. Okay, thank you. Oh, we're almost there. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, scroll up just one little bit. All right. Also, so that we would not have to change the fundamental structure of the faculty handbook as it was, we then decided to further articulate SSAs, what they are, what evidence will be provided, and so forth, where the handbook first speaks about criteria for promotion. So important to highlight here are actually, if you scroll further down a little bit with the headline intertwining. All right, so this is important. First of all, I'm not going to read every word out loud, but we really emphasize that ultimately all faculty activities benefit student success, whether directly or indirectly. So if a faculty member publishes a book or an article, that is scholarship or professional growth that will then be reflected in their teaching, in their undergraduate research advising, in their graduate research advising, etc. And that's just one example in which to really describe that all of our activities in teaching, research, and service benefit students, and that in the reporting process, then faculty take on the role of showing how their activities in these areas benefit student success. They may also have activities that do not necessarily fit in one of the three existing categories, and then in any narrative evaluation, they may then, they as in faculty may articulate those additional student success activities. So the narrative can kind of pull that out, but in the numerical and other evaluation, there shall be no new category. And that's illustrated, if you scroll down a little bit more, where the categories are listed there. Of course, this repeats, yeah, you can stop there. This repeats essentially for all of the ranks following here from senior lecturer up, but you can kind of see that the idea is student success activities are, and this is indicated with an asterisk, they are to be described in each of these areas. So they're always listed underneath, not as a separate numerical item, but as a pulled out item. If you could hold on 1 second, scroll down to page 24, please. Yeah, I'll stop right there where it says number 5, acceptable evidentiary sources relevant to promotion. So the conversation about what counts as student success activities, of course, was pretty extensive because this is entirely new. We didn't know what the Board of Regents meant necessarily. We didn't know how this would apply to each individual unit. So what's important here that we always emphasize that each individual unit needs to further flesh out how they see the reporting to happen and what counts as evidence, what counts as student success activities in their unit. But we did also, and this I think was important to many faculty members, and you can scroll further down, we did assemble down to page 26. We did assemble a sort of representative list, yeah, stop right there, of student success activities. And we roughly tried to stay in a kind of parallel fashion to the other areas that list, that you just saw scroll through above, that list types of evidence. But you can see here we subdivided it further into improvements to curriculum, etc., then advising, mentoring, etc. 5.4.3 is co-curricular and extracurricular activities, academic and professional achievement of students, professional development and classroom practices. And then, of course, it's important always the others category, because in our conversations, it became clear that it's impossible to create a comprehensive list. So that's important that faculty members may according to this, articulate any activity as serving student success that is not listed here. So none of this is prescriptive. So nobody has to go through and check off each item listed. And this is also not comprehensive or exclusive. That means activities that are not listed here very well may be provided as evidence of these SSAs. So that's the point where I want to stop as a logical pause and see if you have any questions so far about student success activities.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. So are there any questions for Patrick about this part of the report? And I guess the major part that we haven't, that's new this month that we didn't see before is just a change in the committee, right, in terms of the due process for appeals.
Yeah, we're still getting there. So right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
and
okay,
that will
well, I
actually
don't
be the next area.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see any raised hands, although I'm not entirely sure with the view from my phone whether I might have overlooked something. So flag me if I have, but it doesn't appear that there are any questions. So go ahead, Patrick. It's back to you. You can take us through the next section.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Dan. And Colleen, if you could please scroll to the top of page 33. All right, thank you. Okay, so this is an important area that has been very significantly affected by the policy changes from the Board of Regents, and why annual evaluations have really changed are really, there are different reasons for that. Number one, actually, if you scroll down a little bit, Colleen, but stay on the same page. The USG has now mandated that all annual evaluations must follow a 5-point Likert scale. Sorry, that number 5 ends up on this next page. So that really affects everybody, of course, okay? So again, it was a little bit of a misnomer up front that these were mainly PTR changes, because obviously how annual evaluations are conducted affects all faculty, no matter what rank and where they are. Okay, if you could scroll back up to the top of that page, please. All right, so important here, this is the first full paragraph. We want to underscore again that the new annual evaluation process, and especially the fact that annual evaluations now take on a much higher level of significance for post-tenure review. You will see that further below when we get to PTR. That has really made it paramount for all units to develop their own specific criteria and rubrics. We've really heard a lot of feedback from across the range of the institution that some programs already had those, some programs were already working on them, but it's really important that all programs, units, departments, disciplines have their discipline-specific annual evaluation criteria. I mean, just to speak of my own area in English, we've been working on this now, but originally, really the annual evaluations were just leaning on the published promotion and tenure rubrics. This is no longer sufficient, because it is important that annual evaluations now also take process into account. So just because for promotion, you expect 3 major achievements or whatever, that leaves way too much gray area for annual evaluations. So each area or each unit must develop a rubric for what constitutes meets, does not meet, exceeds, and so forth within the annual evaluation process.
You don't eat sugar.
Sorry? Okay, that was not for me. I do. Okay, so let's see what else I wanted to highlight here. Yeah, we also, really emphasize in this particular paragraph, which is kind of almost like you can think of it as a little bit of a preamble. That's why there's so much new language here. That we recognize that substantive work takes time, often compounded by delays in publishing processes, for example. Evaluation criteria should therefore value and reward evidence of individual stages in the faculty members' work and development as distinct markers of achievement. So what that concretely means that if ultimately a program requires for promotion and tenure 3 significant scholarly achievement, then on the path towards that goal, an annual evaluation could, for example, note a draft or a submitted article or evidence of research conducted as working towards that achievement. So it's not just the final product that counts towards achievement and towards fulfilling those categories, but it's really each stage that can be documented, but is that for something that's in development. I dwell on this a little bit longer simply because, there's been a lot of conversations about this, how annual evaluations are impacted. And that's, I think, then important that individual programs formulate rubrics that go along with this general guideline here. Also, second paragraph here that starts with student success activities. I'm not going to read through it, but important here, what we're articulating is that as you write your annual evaluations, you highlight with an asterisk in the previous existing or in the other areas, teaching service and scholarship, et cetera, creative activities, you highlight which of those you want to pull out or flag as student success activities. But then in addition, in your narrative, you're also encouraged to articulate how it all fits together and whether there are any other achievements that add to it. So ultimately, we're also saying here that for the purpose of interfolio reporting, because you can't really put an asterisk in there, you will be able to check a box, and I suppose that will have to be built, where you can indicate that a certain activity, let's say in teaching, contributes to student success activities, and kind of similar to reporting high impact practices. All right, since this is relatively complex with evaluations, any questions before I move on to the procedure on the next page?
Yeah, you may be able to summarize most of this fairly quickly, Patrick, because I think we went through a lot of this in April or March. So
yeah,
you might be able to just you might just be able to go straight to the major changes since then and see if anyone wants you to talk in more detail. But I do see one. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. I just had a quick question. This might actually relate more to the procedure part, and I apologize if I missed something. I was wondering if part of this is a timeline for the annual evaluations. I think particularly in CACSE, now that the departments are so large and chairs have so many people to evaluate, we, at least in my department, have been getting our evaluations a lot later than we typically had previously. So this year we received our evaluations in late May. And I guess I'm just wondering how that timeline might need to change in order to allow for this appeals process to take place while faculty are still on contract. And I just didn't know if that was an issue that had come up in the discussion of procedure. Thanks.
Yes, it has. So yeah, like Dan said, just summarize this here. If you look on procedure here and annual evaluations, we did make a few more changes here compared to the April information item that you saw to kind of clarify the timeline. Now, if you look at the first note here, by latest October 1st, the provost shall publish a uniform timeline for the upcoming annual evaluation cycle. And we wrote in there, including faculty report submission, chair evaluations, and the completion of any performance remediation plan. So the chair would have to follow this. Now, because this is an administrative review, we didn't actually put a date on there by which chairs have to we didn't put a specific date, but which date chairs have to conclude their evaluation. But according to this point here, this would have to be pre-established and the chair would have to follow this. So we felt that then we as a faculty or as a Senate actually have a guideline that we can remind the provost of following, that we need this. And then once that timeline is established, chairs will have to follow. I mean, if you get it at the end of May, then clearly there was no timeline that for chair evaluations in place. I don't know if that answers it sufficiently, but that's the idea here.
I think that's helpful. Thanks, Patrick. And also, there was a question in the chat from Amanda, who asked, would the individual rubrics need to be approved by the Senate? My understanding is program rubrics do not, that resides at the program or departmental level. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And I mean, that would be in our policies and procedures. I don't think that would be a Senate item.
Yeah, that matches what I was thinking. So,
right.
Yeah, back to you, Patrick.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we can scroll back further down to annual evaluation appeals. This is on the bottom of page 35. All right, so stop right there. So yeah, compared to April, what you've seen there already, the draft, the main change here was that I received word through Dr. Preston from the USG that one of the items that we had on there in the appeals process, that faculty could decide to appeal the annual evaluations either to a faculty committee or a committee of peers or the dean, and that ultimately the peer committee could overrule, I don't think that was the word, but I'll use that for now, could overrule the chair's evaluation, and that would then be the evaluation on record, that was not acceptable because it was ultimately an administrative review of faculty, and therefore it would not be possible for a peer committee to overrule the chair. So what we have changed then, though, if you scroll down just a little bit, stop right there. Okay, so you would then appeal your annual evaluation to the dean. You have the option as a faculty member, and this was actually something that Dr. Preston in a conversation with me on the phone suggested. We talked about this a little bit in light of the fact that many newly created departments may have a chair who is not in a faculty member's discipline. So he actually suggested that it would be possible for faculty members to solicit further testimony from peers inside and outside of the university. And that's that first paragraph you see on the page here. And that would then become part of that appeals documentation. So in other words, you can then pick peers of your choice to further contextualize how your achievements actually stand up to the rubrics, and to perhaps explain your achievements within the disciplinary expectations, etc. Okay, and then further, the dean will then have to take, of course, the appeals documentation, including that inside-outside testimony into consideration and make their determination. Further down, number 3, if the faculty member, sorry, hold on a second here. So number 2, actually I should back up. And I want to highlight this a little bit more in detail because that was the only substantive change here. The dean carefully reviews the faculty member's report and supporting evidence, as well as the administrative evaluation. The dean will hold a meeting with both the faculty member and the administrator to discuss the evaluation and evidence, request any additional context or supporting materials, and seek to achieve a resolution. Meaning with the chair and the faculty member. The mutually agreed upon revised evaluation as an outcome of this process then becomes the evaluation of record. So If the dean ultimately advises that in light of this new information, there should be changes made, then that changed evaluation becomes the record. If no mutually agreeable resolution is achieved, the dean's evaluation becomes the evaluation of record. So the dean would then have to ultimately either agree with the chair or make their own evaluation. What's important here is that that was the change from our original proposal, where, you know, potentially the peer committee could establish the evaluation of record. But to continue here, if the dean rejects the faculty member's appeal, the dean's evaluation must include a statement documenting the decision in response to all supporting materials, including any peer testimony. So we added that to make sure that the testimony would be not just considered, but it would also be explained by the dean how that was considered and to justify or explain their decision. And finally, the last sentence here, the appeals process before the end.
Patrick.
Here. Go ahead.
Yeah, Gavin's got his hand.
Gavin has his hand up, I think, so.
Patrick, please keep going. I don't want to interrupt you. Just at the end of your just at the end of your talk right here.
No, that's fine. I was just at a stopping point.
Okay, right. Well, so what we've got here then is the committee that we recommended, or the committee that we requested to be in place, has been turned down at the USG level. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so the chair's deal is still as the chair's letter is still as powerful, and actually much more powerful than it was last year. Okay, so then we go to this process where somebody from within and people from without the university can add to things as part of the appeal document. Am I right so far?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So the people outside, I'm just thinking of, let's say, the three main areas, right? The people outside the university will be able to speak to research, standing in the field, so on and so forth. So professional growth and development. Mm-hmm. How do we get documentation to support let's say, our university or college or departmental level service? Professor A from Central Florida won't be able to help there. Also for teaching, how do we get secondary supporting documentation to go into the appeals packet from an individual within the field outside the university? It appears that our protections have been sliced off somewhat, but I may be misinterpreting that. I wonder what any of you thought.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear what everybody thinks, of course, too. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of the protection, that's why we had originally written in there that a peer committee from your department or from your program could actually establish the evaluation of record if there was an appeals process. But like I said, that was struck by the USG. And it was, I mean, I guess we were fortunate that was the only thing that was struck by the USG from everything that we developed here. So just to bank that on the good side. But to come back to what you asked, Gavin, I think these are really good questions. I think the outside testimony or peers outside of the university would probably speak primarily to your scholarship or professional development standing within the discipline, et cetera. What I think service and teaching, or where they are concerned, that you would probably have to ask peers inside the university. But that could be peers, you know, in your program, in your department, but it could also be like, you know, in faculty senate or wherever people have witnessed your work and can speak to its importance. And so the idea here is that you can pick people who you feel can contextualize your evaluation better. If indeed you feel as a faculty member that your contributions have been deemed insufficient. So that it was a little bit of a stopgap, to be honest, because the earlier version was struck ultimately. So I try to put in something in and like I said, Dr. Preston agreed, and then the committee we agreed that would at least add in peer voices, especially in cases where perhaps you feel that your chair does not adequately represent your expertise.
Thank you for doing that, Patrick. And I feel as though it's not as, you know, what we wanted. And as you said, we're lucky that only one thing got struck. I think this is we've done a pretty good job at faculty protection. As you know, as we can get a large packet together from colleagues and people with whom we've worked on committees. So there is some kind of peer support, if you will, if one gets a negative chair evaluation. And so I like it, and I'd really like to thank all of you for composing the whole thing, and especially this in response to what was struck. And Dr. Preston, and Dr. Preston being on board is also very, very helpful. This is good news.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the idea is also that in number 3 there, that the dean in their justification would have to also respond to that additional testimony and not just say, nah, that didn't matter. So since that's obviously specifically put in there as contextualization. So any other question about this particular area? Let me see. I don't see anything in the chat. I don't see any hands. Yeah, so I mean, the rest of that, I probably don't need to highlight all that much in detail, but if you could just scroll down to page 41, Colleen. None of this has actually changed since April. So post-tenure review, all of these processes, I think we were already in keeping with what the USG was looking for. But ultimately, I can answer questions if there's anything that in hindsight you wish you had asked in April, or you wish you had asked in between, or any new insights. But otherwise, this is what we've already looked at. But what I do want to highlight, actually, if you could, no, actually stay right there. Now, if you scroll back up, I'm sorry. One thing that I do want to highlight, if you go to second half of page 41, please. Now, my apologies, Colleen, a little bit further back. Where a PTR first starts. Page 36, actually. All right, no, hold on. Where is it? Yeah, right there. Okay, so this was actually something that we also added in compared to the first draft. That if you look at the bottom, I mean, the middle of this red paragraph, therefore the university commits itself to rewarding faculty success evidence in post-tenure reviews through dedicated high achievement payments, course releases, additional professional development funds, and meaningful celebration of the variety of faculty achievements in all units across campus. Rewards for high performance should be made available at the program/department, college, and university level in recognition of faculty contributions to the success of each unit. So this was really weak up front. I mean, originally in the PTR language in the faculty handbook, and we really feel this is important, that this is not just a punitive process where, you know, insufficient work is punished or has consequences, but that also that people who exceed expectations, in particular, that they reap their rewards here, positive rewards. And just sort of a personal note here, it's kind of ironic. I went through PTR this year as well as I was working with the FTC on PTR revisions. And I mean, I'm not trying to cry here, but there's been nothing. So not at any level. And that's why also, not just because of myself, but in general, it's important that each unit then also creates a structure for rewarding excellent or exceed expectations in PTRs. So that it's not just, oh, this is the provost's job, or the provost says it's the college job. Each unit, according to the way we wrote this, is responsible for creating a reward and recognition system. So I really feel like we've missed that at this point, and everybody can sort of point fingers. Oh, it's really somebody else's responsibility, and then in the end you get nothing. So it's also important that there need to be rewards even in times of financial or budgetary tightness. That doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, but there could be a reward given in all kinds of ways. So people need to be creative. And this is really what we're trying to create here, is a mandate for each unit to participate in that reward process. So it's a little bit of a heads up also to chairs, deans, etc., to put their heads together and think about ways in which they can contribute to that reward and recognition structure. All right, just want to say that for the record, so that doesn't get lost. Anything else or any other questions?
Well, thank you, Patrick. That was a very thorough report, and especially thorough work. I really appreciate all the work you went through. I mean, this was a massive project, 6-month project, that, of course, as we all know, took a tremendous amount of your time during that time. So thank you. I do not see any hands raised, so I will open this up for, if you're ready, Patrick, I'll open this up for general discussion and debate. If anyone wants to say something for or against this motion in just a minute. There's a motion on the floor to approve this package as written. Any discussion of this before we proceed to a vote? Well, I do not see any hands raised, anything coming through the chat. So I will assume that we are ready for a vote. So Colleen, you're welcome to launch the poll.
Gavin has a hand raised.
Hi, it's Colin. Thank you. Remember we're having this.
Go ahead.
Remember we're having this back and forth about who can vote and proxies and what have you. I'm here as a result of an invitation that Colleen kindly sent me, and I still got the poll on which until July I'm not entitled to vote. So I don't know how we would correct that process, but just given that there's a point of contention here, I don't know how we sort that out. I'm sorry to be a nuisance.
Right. No, that's fine. So we're operating on the honor system, which I think has worked pretty well this year. So everyone who's on the call gets the poll, and we just tell people if you're not a senator at the moment, meaning the 2021-22 senators this year, then you're not supposed to vote. And based on the numbers that have come in, while I can't guarantee that no one who was not supposed to vote ever voted, it looks to me like in general with the results that that people are pretty honest about the whole thing. So I don't have too many worries. Amanda.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Dan. Sorry about that.
No, it's a good point.
So I guess my question has to do with the rewards for high performance. And it's really more of a concern and thinking about how we can make sure that then doesn't become an incentive to have lower scores on these reviews. So how do we make sure that they're not making decisions based on available budget and not based on actual performance? So if they have 3 people come up for review and they're all have high performance, but they only have a certain amount of money, I guess what measures do we have in place to make sure that those decisions, those rewards are coming in honestly, I guess?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's
thanks, Amanda. Patrick.
Oh, sorry. I mean, in terms of the FTC's conversation on this, I mean, I think as far as PTR is concerned, you have your peer committee who evaluates you. So the same thing for promotion and tenure. If you're promoted like the senior lecturer, it would be your peer committee that evaluates you. And so any promotion or post-tenure review reward structure would be based on a peer committee and not on administrative review. Because while that peer committee takes the annual evaluations written by the chair into account, it is in their purview to then compare them to the adopted unit-specific rubrics. And again, that kind of brings us back around to, that's why it's so important that each unit has very distinct annual evaluation rubrics, but also rubrics for promotion and tenure.
Right. So then are we saying that this is just for tenured or tenure track professors? Because on the non-tenured side, we are only evaluated by administrators and not by our peers.
Well, you're evaluated similar between, for faculty who are tenure track, they're only evaluated by their peers when it comes to promotion and tenure. Are you saying that like
our annual reviews go to our coordinator and our chair?
Yeah, that's the same thing for everybody, right? And so the idea of rewards on an annual basis, whether a chair recommends you for a merit raise, yes, you're absolutely right, Amanda, with your concern that is ultimately still up to the chair. I mean, of course, merit raises, I don't know, we haven't gotten any in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a bit of a non-issue, but it's still.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to say that, but
seeing
some
like a gap.
degree it is.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing a gap and a loophole for administrators is where I'm kind of concerned.
Right, but ultimately it is parallel between tenure track and non-tenure track people, that annual evaluations are always by the administrator. So that's the same for each rank.
Yeah. Okay, so are we ready to, any other questions, comments? Don't see anything going once, going twice. Are we ready to relaunch the poll? I think it was about halfway
Yeah, I can do that.
through when it was interrupted. Yeah.
I
Okay.
can't relaunch it to where it would start where the voting ended. It would have to relaunch.
Right.
as a
People would
new
just have
poll.
to.
But I think
Right, people would have to vote
take
again.
care of some of the concerns that were brought up before about who's voting. So we would have on the record a vote where people understood what and who needs to vote.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. So before we do that, let me just double check, give everyone about 5 seconds here to make any final comments. Once we launch the poll, I think it pretty much closes discussion on the issue. So I want to make sure there are no raised hands, no outstanding comments. No one wanted to put anything in the chat regarding this. Ask Patrick anything before we vote. Okay. So I don't see anything. So I think we are ready to move to the vote. So we will launch the poll, and those of you who are serving as senators through the end of this month, you are eligible to vote. So everyone who is a current senator during the 2021-22 academic year is welcome to vote. We'll launch the poll.
All right, so it relaunched. There we go.
Okay, and it looks like it passes. I think we have a very solid majority there. So thank you, Colleen, and thank you, Patrick, for massive amount of work, which is now, we hope, concluded. So congratulations to you and your committee for some outstanding work. Okay, so I think we are ready to go to a quick announcement from the FITC. Yvonne?
Okay. Yes,
Thank you to Gavin Lee, who accepted to chair FITC, and FITC voted right before the end of the semester. So we have a new chair. Thank you so much, Gavin.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Gavin.
I'm trying
welcome.
to big shoes to fill.
Well, yes, I really appreciate your work, Yvonne. You've done amazing things with this committee, and but I know, Gavin, that you'll be a worthy successor. So thank you for taking this on. Okay, now we go to what may be a lengthier item, which is from the Budget Committee. David has a report for us on some important developments over the last few weeks that I think most of us were anticipating in terms of the Budget Committee's work during the early stages of a process of learning about some USG initiatives in this regard. So David, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Actually, Rob Kilpatrick is here, and he was actually the one that attended the training. So I will turn it over to Gavin. I'm sorry, to Rob if he's ready.
And you two just let me know when you're ready for me to share the recommendations in the addendum, and I can pull those up for you.
Okay, sounds good. Rob, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, Dan. Can everyone hear me all right? Can somebody confirm you can hear me? Okay, good. I did attend the meeting and along with Rick Sigmund, also of the Budget Committee, and I agreed to do this readout for the Senate meeting today. And I'll try not to be overly long because you've already been through quite a bit of presentations today. But just to give you an outline of what I want to cover, I want to just describe the format and the substance of the meeting. Then I want to talk about what we viewed, Rick and I, and then we discussed these with the Budget Committee, viewed as some key takeaways from the meeting. And then we can move on to the recommendations, and I'm happy to take any questions that people might have and may or may not be able to respond to all of them. But here we go. So the format of the meeting, first of all, I got the impression that the substance of what was shared during this meeting was very similar to what was shared with the USG Faculty Council in the earlier meeting that Dan Williams had attended and described in an email sent out to senators. I'm not convinced there was a great deal of new information that came out of the meeting that we attended. It was more targeted at administrators, but there were some points of emphasis that we found to be quite important. One of the big takeaways, so the format, first of all, so in the morning, all institutions, so it was R1s and comprehensives together, all institutions were in the same room, and the USG made a presentation where they outlined what they view as a climate of ongoing budgetary and enrollment challenges throughout the system. Some universities are up in enrollment, but most are not. As we've seen before, the overall enrollment in the USG declined for the first time in a while this year, I think. And so the morning presentation was about some prospects for the future that we don't seem to be in a boom period for enrollment, to say the least. And was followed by a presentation from an administrator at Kennesaw State University who offered up their metrics as a way to start conversations about strategic budget allocation. And the message from the USG was simply that institutions and hopefully institutions have been doing this all along, but that they should be approaching any budgetary decision strategically, whether or not they're growing or shrinking, and that this should be grounded, it should be informed by a clear set of metrics. Kennesaw's approach, which again had the benefit of being highlighted by the USG, is to have developed a dashboard that's available to all employees at Kennesaw, so people can kind of clearly see how each program is doing set against other programs at the university, where enrollments are growing, where enrollments are shrinking, in a way that was pretty legible and pretty clear. And the mantra, the message again and again was that this should be a starting point for a conversation about strategic budget reallocations or allocations, and not simply sort of a data-driven process that carves out the opportunity for dialogue and exchange between people who have better knowledge of what a program is and what it needs. So that was the morning session. It addressed the overall picture within USG. In the afternoon, the USG split us into two groups. One was institutions that were growing. They went to an upstairs room to discuss strategies for how to allocate resources in a climate of growth and sort of how to potentially reverse those if and when they meet a decline. And we were downstairs with probably the majority of institutions, and those were institutions that were going to discuss how they would go about non-renewals. Non-renewals was the strategy defined, and I think Dan explained this too, as the most sort of obvious short-term solution to a budget crisis. And the USG has a form that developed through their HR department, and most of the training in the afternoon did not involve the this code that's going to be used to analyze enrollment at the university. Now, some institutions were working individually with some USG administrators on that, but most of the whole group training in that downstairs level was about how to fill out this form regarding non-renewals. And these are non-renewals, and it's been said before, but it needs to be clearly stated again that these are related to budget reductions, not to performance. So there's a clear distinction there, and there's a different process in place. These non-renewals have to be submitted to the USG by July 1 and approved by the USG before faculty are informed. So that was the overall format of the meeting. A few other, and I get more into details if people have specific questions. A few other takeaways for me was, I think that Rick and I and the budget committee at large views our participation, the fact we were invited, the fact that we participated and observed as a positive step towards perhaps what can be a climate of greater collaboration, cooperation between the Faculty Senate .
Rob, it looks like you're not on anymore. I can see your video, but we've lost your sound. I don't know what we're.
Let me text
Are you back?
him. He may
Okay,
have
yeah, go
one.
ahead. Yeah. Yeah, I know a number of us are dealing with difficult internet today. I, of course, have my own issues with the logging in by phone, but I know the budget committee chair.
If I may, Rob is out of the country. He's in Italy.
Okay.
So texting him, I don't know if he's,
Did did my volume cut out?
Yeah, it did, but you're back now.
Okay, sorry about that.
So,
Where was I when I?
Okay, so
Rob, you were
told us.
discussing how. Sorry, Dan.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You were discussing about the relationship we were building with the
Oh yes,
administration.
One moment, I have to go open my door. I'll be right back.
Well, I can step in for a second here because I think what Rob was going to say.
I'm back. I'm back, David.
Okay.
Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so what I added to this, what we viewed as a positive first step was a rhetorical commitment, at least on the part of the administration, and sort of an emphasis on the part of the USG that metrics and data should be shared in a transparent way with campuses. Faculty Senate should be involved, and that campus communities, the employees, should be informed of the budget metrics that are most important to a university in determining how funds and resources are allocated. So I think this that's one of the things that really struck me was this idea that there needs to, that a metric, a data point is the beginning of a conversation and isn't meaningful in and of itself. And so the provost stated to Rick and I in a one-on-one meeting that he believes in a strong dean model, where deans will have the opportunity to, when presented with data, to advocate for certain positions or to give greater contextualization to data. So if that's the approach of the administration moving forward, as we navigate these budget reductions, I think that would be welcomed by the Faculty Senate and the Budget Committee, and by our department and college level, school level administrators as well. So I went over the timeline. The Provost Preston did indicate that UWG, there was no timeline provided, but UWG would be working on its own dashboard that would be available to UWG employees, that would be the plan. Once again, it was reiterated in this meeting at the USG that it would be it's unlikely that tenure track faculty would be non-renewed in this initiative. One thing that came up in a few individual meetings, or at least at our table with our own UWG administrators and Rick and I, was that President Kelly, Provost Preston repeated several times that in their view, UWG is sort of ahead of the curve compared to some institutions in this budget reduction process, having already sort of planned for declines in enrollment, and that the goal would be to minimize non-renewals because of that, compared to some institutions that are just going through this for the first time. Now, obviously, no specifics could be given or were given according to revolving numbers of non-renewals at UWG at this point, because we do have to respect the USG process, and you can't inform faculty or anyone else at the university about non-renewals before the USG approves those, right? And you can't inform the budget committee about numbers of non-renewals before the faculty members themselves have been notified. So these were sort of my, I don't want to give you a play-by-play of the whole meeting, but these were some of my main takeaways, our main takeaways from this meeting with the USG. And they were what led to the list of recommendations that we offered up. And so the philosophy behind these recommendations is simply to continue building a platform upon which a collaborative relationship can be built and nurtured between the budget committee and the administration as we try to face these challenges together. And we think that the sort of information sharing that is outlined in the recommendations would be a positive step in that process. This isn't the first time that we've asked for some of this information. Things like the status of the debt burden of the university. We've been given, some answers this year, but we also had a transition in leadership in the Vice Presidency of Business and Finance, so that made some of the information sharing more difficult. I'd say that I'd say that this was a positive first step, but we very much feel that we need to see continued step towards transparency, information sharing, and collaboration. And we would like the budget committee to be actively involved, for example, in reviewing and helping create metrics that our institution will collectively prioritize. And if those will be informing decisions about resource allocation in an environment of scarcity, we feel that the budget committee and the Senate absolutely need to be involved in creating those metrics, including creating the way that they're shared with the campus community. So that's an overview. I'm happy to entertain questions that people have to report back on things that transpired at this meeting at the USG. And David, please step in if there's something that we reported back to the budget committee that you feel is important that I didn't cover in this particular overview.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. This was really helpful. So I'm really glad. I'm glad you had this opportunity, and I'm really glad that you shared all of this with the Senate. Any questions for Rob? Does anyone want to ask Rob anything? In just a minute, we're going to have the budget committee present some recommendations that we're going to vote on. But before that, you're welcome to ask Rob any questions. I guess I have one quick question, Rob. You mentioned you had talked with the provost about the timeline, and
Yes.
And of course he said he couldn't commit to a firm timeline, but I guess in your conversations with him, or in the budget committee's conversations with him, did you ask him whether he would be able at some point to give faculty a sense as to when non-renewal letters, if they're issued, might be when faculty might be informed as to when they can be issued, or I guess otherwise I'm concerned that a lot of faculty will be waiting for months very nervously, wondering, at what point is their job safe for the next academic year? At what point is it not? So I'm just wondering if in your conversations with him, if the idea of letting faculty know what they can expect, was discussed, and what the response might have been.
There was in fact no concrete date given, or nothing was said with certainty, but every indication given to Rick and me was that August would be the date by when faculty will be informed. I should add that the posture of our administration is also one, as I think we've seen over the year in the Senate, of significant optimism about our enrollment outlook. So they repeated a claim that's been made several times that projects sort of a return to enrollment growth in 2024. And so that optimistic outlook, I think, was also characterized many of their interactions with Rick and me during this meeting. To answer your question more directly, Dan, each time questions of that nature came up, August was given as the goal, as the target. That's what the USG said, and that's what our administration repeated as well.
Okay, that sounds
for
good.
this particular
Rosemary.
exercise. Now, there's also non-renewals that aren't related to this particular budget reduction exercise, and those would be according to whatever your notification timeline is, depending on your position type and your years of service.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Rosemary.
Thanks. Thank you, Rob. Just a quick question. I think I heard you say that recommendations, or any recommendations for non-renewals, are supposed to be submitted to the USG by July 1st.
That's correct.
So given that timeline, is there any realistic hope that your committee is going to be able to play a role in developing these metrics, or what's your sense of that when it comes to non-renewals this year?
I'm glad you asked this question, because it leads me to a clarification I need to make. When we talk about metrics, those metrics are related to more intermediate to long-term solutions to budget scarcity. What we're talking about this summer is a process that's addressing immediate budget shortfalls. So there's an immediate need for a budget cut in numerous UWG or USG institutions. The most efficient way outlined, although the USG didn't sort of exclude other forms of controlling budget, managing budget. And in fact, that's the claim that our administration is kind of making here, is that they've been working to manage the budget. And so that will make it so there may be a lesser need to cut a large number of positions. But again, we don't have any specific numbers. But this summer is only related to these immediate budget reduction related non-renewals. So I should have clarified that earlier, Rosemary. And so thank you for asking that question.
Any other questions for Rob? I don't see anything. So David, And thank you, Rob, for that. That's really helpful. David, the floor is yours to talk about your committee's recommendations.
Sure. Well, thank you, Rob, so much for stepping in. I do want to reiterate a couple of points that Rob made. I think he pointed out that we were the only university that had faculty at this training. Well, I think a good sign. I have been having several meetings with Dr. Preston. I've had a couple with Scott McElroy, our new VP of Business Services. And I know they're still working on a lot of this. So I don't think they know for certain what's going to happen between now and July 1st. If so, I don't know it. I do know there's emphasis to focus more for attrition. A lot of this with positions and retirements and just natural turnover will take care of most of this, and it will become more of an issue of reallocation of resources. We're working through this. And I just let them know that in the short term we're here to support them, but that's where things are right now. With that, we do have 6 recommendations that we wanted to run past the Senate. And I think Colleen has those right there. So in essence, I could just read through these, but the Budget Committee worked with the administration to set the metrics to be used in measuring and prioritizing budget allocations. That's one thing we're asking for. Again, this is going to be, to Rob's point, more the intermediate to long term. After notification of non-renewals, the Budget Committee be given a summary of non-renewals reported at the college school level and by demographics that are a result of budget cuts. I underline that because that was a discussion between me and Dr. Preston. Obviously, we don't need to get into HR issues. So there will be non-renewals that are not related to budget cuts. And I agreed with him that we really have no business getting involved in. So he asked me to include this part about non-renewals as a result of the budget cuts. The Budget Committee be given updates on the status of the debt servicing and revenue generated from auxiliary services. The Faculty Senate and Budget Committee be informed of the size of UWG's budget reduction. Faculty Senate, us, be consulted and informed on any major budget reduction decisions exceeding 4% of the overall budget. You see that word major is bolded. That was added after discussions with Dr. Preston. I understand there were 30,000 minor budget reductions last year. We obviously don't need to know about 30,000. So we qualified that statement. And then the 6th one, ensure that the broader campus community understand the key metrics that will be used to determine where budget may be cut. But the overarching message here is about working with us, faculty, and being transparent. That was a message that Rob and Rick got from USG training. That's what the USG is encouraging the universities. And I'm encouraged based on what we've seen in the past few months that the administration may be willing to do that. I will say that Dr. Preston has been very forthcoming with me at this point. So those are our recommendations.
Yeah, thank you, David. This was helpful. So thank you for presenting those. In just a minute, I guess we're going to vote on those, but I'll open the floor for questions for David and also for just general discussion. Does anyone want to speak to these recommendations for, against, or ask about them? I don't see any raised hands. Nothing in the chat, but I'll give people a moment to just kind of process this to see if anyone wants to jump in. with anything so that we don't run the vote prematurely. But seeing nothing, again, no raised hands, nothing in the chat, I think we're probably ready to vote on these items. So the Budget Committee has requested that the Senate formally approve this general plan for how the Budget Committee will work with the administration over the coming year regarding any potential budget cuts or significant reallocations. So I think we're ready to launch the poll. Colleen? Okay, it looks like it passes. So very good. So we'll now go to the Rules Committee. We have two items that the Rules Committee is going to present to us for a vote. So Jamie?
Thank you. So really what we're looking at is, for our first one, is just updating the correct name for this position in the Budget Committee.
Okay, so yeah, so this should be very, very uncontroversial, I would think. Simply updating a title. So I think unless someone wants to jump in with a question on this, I think we're probably ready for a vote. Colleen? And it looks like it passes. So very good. Back to you, Jamie.
Okay.
This next one is a little bit more complicated.
Yes. So we have some minor changes, just kind of giving a fresh look to the shared governance procedures for modifications to academic degrees and programs. So in there, there's just information or items that have been added to what was already there. So we have several things here about adding and removing programs, anything to doing with tracks, anything about modifying minors or those standalone certificates, making sure that informational items for the Senate around the XIDS classes. We also have some review things by the Senate about the graduate and undergraduate programs around the high impact practices. And then the last thing that is not items not to be considered by the Senate, really just about the changes in the number of times a course may be taken by a student. So this is just kind of like a revision, an update to what was already there.
Yeah, thank you. So just to clarify, this is every few years, this shared governance document is updated. This is essentially a document to guide how things are submitted in Curriculog and particularly where they're routed once they're in Curriculog. So it especially affects the UPC and GPC committees. And so a few weeks ago, Jill Drake contacted us to ask for some updates to reflect some new situations that were not necessarily clearly addressed by the existing document, which was last revised in 2018, and to bring this document into conformity actually with our current practices for the most part. That was our goal. And so the UPC and GPC chairs met with Jill and with me and with Colleen, and together we hammered out a few changes that were then submitted to the Rules Committee. So this represents the best practices going forward in terms of Curriculog submissions as articulated by the group of people working on this, which included UPC and GPC chairs. So any questions on this before we move to a vote? Does anyone want to ask about anything in this document that's unclear that will guide how Curriculog items are routed next year? If not, and I don't see any hands raised or any comments coming in through the chat, I think we're probably ready for a vote. So Colleen, you can launch the poll if you like.
I just wanted to add that Whitney Brand, who is our curriculum manager, she is watching Senate right now. Hi, Whitney. And she, as soon as this passes, she will update Curriculog once Curriculog is back online. So it'll be pretty seamless once we start adding proposals.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Whitney. We appreciate that. Okay. Okay, and it looks like it passes. So thank you. I do not have any old business or new business, but we do have a couple of announcements. And the first of those announcements comes from Anne-Marie Reed. Anne-Marie, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate you all giving me a little bit of time to speak with you today. I'm about to share my screen. Can you all see what I've shared?
Yes.
Okay, great. So basically what I'm trying to do is just talk a little bit about the opportunity for my office, the Office of Community Standards, to be able to streamline a process working with faculty for better collaboration and support of our students. And it really comes down to dealing with academic integrity issues. And some of what has happened in the past is that we have some faculty who kind of work on academic dishonesty or integrity issues on their own. We have some who share with our office. And so in an attempt to streamline the process so that it's properly documented, the student has appropriate response to them in writing about an academic dishonesty case. So in looking at this form, what you see on the red side of it is that if a student is found there's a potential there for academic dishonesty, a faculty member sees plagiarism, perhaps would be one. They make contact with our office and we say, yes, this is a first-time violation for a student. We've never seen them before for academic dishonesty. It would put the course in motion for the faculty member to be able to reach out to the student, have a conversation with them, and there could be one of three things that happen. Either after conversation, the faculty member decides that there is actually no chance that this was academic dishonesty of any sort, and so that kind of closes it. Or the faculty member determines that there is, turn it in, perhaps came through and showed a certain percentage. And so the faculty member has the ability to say to the student, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to provide this as a grade issue for you. So perhaps you're going to fail on this assignment, or I'm going to decrease points on this assignment for you. And I really think that it would be helpful to have you work with the Writing Center. So I'm going to send you to the Writing Center once. The student says, yep, I agree, I'm all set. The faculty member would notify us. We send out the letter to the student. We document it in the database, send out the letter to the student, copy it to the faculty member so that they know we've done exactly what they have prescribed for the student, and the student takes care of the things that they need to. We track that the student actually went to the Writing Center and so forth. The other option is that the student says to the faculty member, I don't agree with you. I don't think I did anything wrong, and I'm not going to take a sanction at this time. That then the same report would be filled out. The same report will come to our office, and we will then provide a hearing with the student. The faculty member would be included in that hearing process. And from there, what would happen is that we would make a determination of responsibility with the student. So as you can see, if it went through on the side where the student had agreed, everything goes through, the letter is done, and it goes on, and eventually it would close out when the student sanctions are done. If the student didn't agree, the letter goes out, copied to the faculty, and it moves over to Office of Community Standards for a hearing. You can see in the circular box here, the student chooses the type of hearing. They may have a hearing by a single administrator. That would be someone like myself, who would hear the case with the student, ask questions and so forth, talk with the faculty member, bring them into that piece of it. Or it may be with our student conduct board. Those two are the same. And so we would actually provide that and go right through the hearing with the student. Now, once the hearing is done, if the student is found responsible, the faculty that can then make that grade determination. So if the faculty had said to the student, I'm going to fail you in the assignment, I'm going to fail you in the class for this, the faculty then puts that in motion, but then our office also puts the appropriate sanctions in motion for the student. The other part is that if you look at this, for example, if this is a student's second or third offense of academic dishonesty, or the offense is so egregious. And when we look at a really egregious offense, we're looking at, for example, what I've seen as an egregious offense in academic dishonesty has been a situation where the student is in a graduate program or a doc program, and really none of these kinds of things should be happening. So that's pretty egregious at that point. We've not really had on the undergraduate level first-time violations that are so egregious that a faculty really doesn't have the ability to make those determinations and conversations with the student. So we would want the faculty to still do that. I think what we're trying to avoid in creating this and putting this through here is that we don't want multiple processes for the same violation to a student. So we don't want them to go through one process with the faculty and then one process with the Office of Community Standards. So it's an opportunity to try and streamline our process, but also when there are multiple violations or egregious violations, we really want to do a more formalized hearing process where we include faculty in that discussion with the student to move forward on the proper outcome of it. The key points in this are reaching out first to see if this student has had previous academic dishonesty cases. If not, what are the best things, the rubric that you would need to have in order to say these are the kinds of things in addition to grade options that you could have to work with the student. And the biggest change probably would be that if the student is not found responsible for academic dishonesty, then there wouldn't be a grade determination. And we're trying to eliminate what we have run into I can only think of it one time so far, but where a student has had a grade determination, which is considered a sanction, but they were not actually found responsible. They didn't have due process to go through to determine that they were in violation. And so we kind of missed the students' rights there. So really what we would want to do is streamline the process together. What I'd like to do at this point is take questions from you about moving to this process so that we can together create the more formalized process for a vote with you. So I wanted to give you a heads up. We have had the opportunity to talk with the provost and with the associate deans, and our appropriate next step is to get questions from you. And I see, Kathleen, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Kathy, the floor is yours.
Yeah. One of the things that I think was a deterrent to working through the Office of Community Standards was the amount of evidentiary sources that needed to be turned in and the amount of paperwork or the work that needed to be done in order to actually work with the office about possible plagiarism or academic dishonesty. So is this now kind of a streamline so we don't have to turn in, all the paperwork and the evidentiary sources before we have this conversation? Or how is this streamlining it for faculty so that we feel that we actually get somewhere when we do this process?
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. The things that we would need in order to look at if we were hearing the case for the student, and what we would want if a faculty member, if the student accepted that informal resolution with the faculty member, what we would really want attached is, for example, the Turnitin report that you had so that we could see that. Or I dealt with a case most recently where the faculty didn't have it. It was a math class and the faculty had already gone online and looked up where the student had gotten these answers from. So attaching that, those can be attached right to the report. But in addition, you have the ability, usually we want to look at the syllabus to see what it is that you shared with the student about what the outcome would be. So we look at the syllabus, we look at the document that, for example, the paper that they submitted through Turnitin, or if you you already looked up other sources where you found the plagiarism, we would want to attach that to the form you submit. Does that answer your question well?
Thank you. That does sound like it's going to be an easier process. I appreciate it.
Great. I think Dr. Varga, Matt Varga, you also had.
Well, we may have more questions for you. I don't know. Any other questions for Anne Marie?
Dr. Varga had a question for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
It was just.
Yeah. Yes,
the
logo.
Could we just have a conversation about this with the graduate school as we evolve the graduate school? That's it. That's all I was going to ask.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you want to do that at another time?
Oh yeah, I don't want to take up this time for that.
Sure. Okay, no problem. Would you please send this to me? Yes, Colleen, we are working on this format, and so there are things like the logo that needs to be changed. There's some wording, a couple of little issues in terms of typos that we want to fix, and then yes, we would absolutely share that.
So if you can't get it done in the next week or so, because I know you have a lot on your plate, we can always get it in the next Senate meeting. We can just add it as an information item, or even put it as old business, and then have, because I'm sure you're gonna, after you talk to the graduate school and you may have things that you want to add, we can add that to the minutes then, and actually have it on the agenda as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Marjorie, I think you have a hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Anne Marie, should we have a tailored plagiarism policy on our syllabi?
We do recommend that every faculty member put their policy for their class on their syllabus. So what is it that you expect from a student, and what do you plan to do if you see plagiarism of a student during the course, during your class?
And we could leave that somewhat open-ended, because I know it kind of depends on the case.
Correct.
Okay.
So some faculty have put like first time violation is X, and if I see continued violation, it is, failure in the class, or a second violation, that sort of thing. So faculty do that all the time. We see that frequently on their syllabus.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Anne Marie? I guess I have a quick question. Anne Marie, thank you for this, by the way. I think this was very informative. You mentioned in passing in the course of your announcement that you wanted to talk with the Faculty Senate about voting on this. And of course, that wouldn't take place today. But is that something that you would like for the fall? You would like the Faculty Senate to give you its official feedback to these recommendations?
We would like the feedback, and I do think that it has been said to me that the better way to do this is to ask the faculty for a vote on this. And so I do think we want to get to a point where we are all in agreement so that we can set this up as a formal process, and that faculty will have an immediate knowledge of where to go to and what to do, and everybody's sort of following the same process.
Yeah, that sounds good. I appreciate that. So most likely that would probably be the work of the TLA committee, although ultimately it would be the incoming Senate chair's determination on that. So I will communicate with Jeff on that later this month, and we'll see if we can get a committee charged with taking this forward, probably the TLA committee. This wouldn't start until August, and of course our next Faculty Senate meeting is in September, but we could probably start work on that at the beginning of the fall semester and maybe move forward relatively quickly, since I'm sure you would want to move this along. So we'll see what we can do.
Dan, I have a question for Anne Marie that's come through the chat.
Yes.
With regards to the language under the honor code on the concourse syllabus, has that been updated? There's a link. So if you go on to the concourse syllabus, the template that we use for that, there's a section, or wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the University of West Georgia institutional template. There's a section for the honor code, and it has a direct link that will take you to the Office of Community Standards site. I've had a question as to whether the information on that site is updated.
Nothing on that. I'm sorry, Colleen, nothing on that site has been updated at this point. We're in the process of working on that right now.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Anne Marie? Well, I don't see any. So thank you, Anne Marie. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for giving me the time today. Happy Friday. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too. So we have at least one additional announcement, and that's from Matt Varga from the Graduate School. So Matt, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dan. So as we transition, the evolution of the Graduate School, I just wanted to provide some basic announcements and get some feedback on a couple things quickly. So I'm committed to continuing the institution's process of removing some barriers for students and also programs, particularly self-imposed barriers. And one of those barriers has been change of admissions requirements for programs. And depending on timing, that change can happen, take 3 to 4 months and not be effective at least for another semester after that. And the Graduate School has had a precedent to allow the admissions changes prior to the completion of curriculum, as long as it benefits the student. And I'm not talking about, if we wanted to restrict admission students, just, if there was a GRE change that we wanted to remove or remove letters of recommendation. What we've typically tried to do and work with programs is, as long as it's consistent for all students that are being evaluated and criteria hasn't been applied differently, we can go ahead and honor that as it goes through the system, because we want to make sure that we are staying relevant, competitive, and increasing accessibility for students. There's already been a number of instances where that's come up just in the last couple of weeks. So I just want to make sure that we're able to help students. And the one thing that I hear a lot and that I experienced was that the graduate programs, their admissions requirements tend to have little or nothing to do with other programs outside their department or even college for that matter. So I do want to be clear that I'm not advocating skipping curriculum. I'm not advocating skipping shared governance. I just want to try and get ahead of this when it's already been approved by the program faculty and the department chair. We still want to require the change be submitted as an information item. And, you know, again, we're not advocating for open admissions. So, you know, in short, the practice that we're trying to move to is more of a, if you have a programmatic change for admissions, we can implement that as long as it's not restrictive and it increases accessibility. And I wanted to see if there's any concerns, support, or questions about this change in practice as we're moving forward.
Yeah, I guess we'll open it up for questions. I guess that's the sort of thing I would really like the graduate committee, the graduate studies committee or graduate programs committee rather, to weigh in on. They may want to discuss this. I don't know if the Senate could, as a whole, would be prepared to say very much before the GPC has a chance to look at this. So that may be something for the GPC to look at as soon as they reconvene in August. But I'll open it up to the floor. Any questions, comments, anything that any response to what Matt has suggested here?
Matt didn't say it, but I just want to add that typically those kinds of changes are information items, so you don't have to worry about, well, it gets to our committee and we totally revamp it, and then what are we going to do when some people are admitted or underneath this new change? Typically those are information items anyway, so we don't run that risk.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so if this has already been happening in terms of information items, that may be fine. Any other questions, comments, any responses?
And the other piece, you know, an example is the Georgia PSC removed a minimum GPA requirement, you know, effective July 1st. So then that means that we couldn't use that change unless we put it through the entire system, which would take us a year, where our peer institutions are eliminating it as is. So that's just one example of why we have this precedent, but I wanted to make it more well-known and get faculty Senate feedback on it.
Yeah. We have a question for you that's on a slightly different topic, Matt, but since you're here, maybe you'd be willing to take this. In the chat, there's this comment that has come in from Nadia, one of our senators. One significant barrier that affects students and affects whether students come to us, awarding GRA ships to programs and then hiring GRAs has become a lot more time consuming than before. This is a change over the past year. Could you please talk about it? Can we please go back to previous lower work on faculty option of dealing with these matters? So that of course, this was something that took place over the course of months that we talked about in the Senate before with the GRA ships. But I think the specific question is, the new process has added several hours of workload to faculty who are already feeling overstretched, and they're wondering if you can address that at some point.
Yeah, so as we have gone through this first rendition, we've clearly seen some areas that can be improved upon, and certainly some areas that I think are working well. As we transition, that is going to be an area that I'm looking at and going to be seeking feedback on, particularly maybe some more clarity around the criteria that's used in selection, the people that are selecting the GAs and positions and whatnot. So yeah, I'm certainly open to that. I'm currently reviewing it. I can't say right now one way or the other that yes, we'll go back to what we were, what we did. I also know that the provost is involved in the new structure of the assistantship. So I'd also want to consult with him on how, this past year went and how he feels it went as well. So I hear you. And that's certainly something that I would love to sit down and get more feedback on. That's something I'm very open to is having those conversations, because I'm all about the assessment, the needs assessment, what's worked, what's not working, and then how can we come to some sort of compromise that works for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or responses to Matt? Any comments, any questions? Well, seeing none.
I got two more real quick things, if that's okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, please do.
The other thing I just want to put on people's radar is the consideration of letters of recommendation. Now, I'm not putting forth anything as of now about, removing them or whatnot, but just to give you an idea, right now we have 1,200 letters of recommendation that are outstanding for fall 2022. Oftentimes they're not read. Oftentimes they're a template. When faculty are asked for them, they can be, time consuming, at least I know it is for me. So just as you're thinking through the admissions moving forward, ask yourselves if that's something that you really need to make decisions. And then we're also looking at ways to help programs know who's confirmed after they've been admitted, because right now we just admit and we don't know if they're coming until they're actually enrolled. So that makes class sizes difficult. That makes instructors difficult. That makes just a lot of things difficult. So we're trying to do what we can to help faculty, kind of like what Nadia just talked about removing barriers, making your jobs easier, taking off some of the load that you all have had, and absorbing it as we are evolving to graduate school. So I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. We appreciate you being here. Okay, well, I don't have any additional announcements that have been sent to me or that are on the agenda. Does anyone want to make any quick announcements before we adjourn?
Dan,
let me just go.
Well, you may have been about to address
Go ahead.
it, but I understand this is your last meeting as our chair. And I just wanted to express my appreciation for all the work that you've done. For the past 2 years, I think you've probably had the most stressful term as faculty senate chair, and you've handled it remarkably. And I cannot thank you enough for all the work that you've done. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for everything.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you, David. I really appreciate that.
Dan?
Yes?
I would like to mirror what David said. It's been a tough 2 years, and your leadership has been exemplary. And I just, the work you put in, I can't imagine. And it's not worth, I don't know, what is it? One course release? It's not. You've done a heck of a lot of work under very, very difficult circumstances. And I'm very, very grateful. And I hope to continue working with you in some other capacity, but thank you so much. You deserve the break. Go on vacation somewhere. I can recommend the Florida Keys.
Well, and if you're recommending the Florida Keys, I'll have to do it quickly, I guess, before climate change takes over. But thank you. That's really kind of you. And I wanted to express my thanks to the many chairs, the committee chairs, who have really put in a tremendous amount of work this year. I just think about several of you, some we've heard from today, some of course we who do not have committee reports today, but worked throughout the year with some massive workloads. And you're right, I do get a course release. The committee chairs actually don't get any course release for what they're doing, which makes their work all the more astonishing. And so I really think the success of the Senate depends on a lot of people, but central to that, among others, is the work of the faculty senate chairs. So thank you for your work, and thank you for the incoming chairs like you, David, and you, Gavin, who I think are going to be really exceptional people as well in what I know is not an easy undertaking. So thank you to everyone. And thank you, Colleen, to probably more than anyone in the Senate. In fact, I would say definitely more than anyone in the Senate. The work of the executive secretary really makes all of this possible. And Colleen has just done an exceptional job. This is her last Senate meeting in this role as well, although I think she'll actually be quite busy next year working, in some way behind the scenes to make sure that there's a smooth transition, at least at the beginning of the year. So I know, Colleen, your work is not done, and certainly not done this weekend, as once again, Colleen will compile the minutes and go through all of the work that entails. So thank you, Colleen, for your exceptional work. Thank you to all of you for taking time out of a June day of all times, when I know some of you are off contract. So I really appreciate this. Have a wonderful weekend, a great rest of the summer, And at the next meeting in September, of course, you'll have the new incoming chair, Jeff Reber, and I'm really grateful for his willingness to take on this work. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you later. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Dan. Oh, he's gone.